So I want to start off today's show with this. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. I do want to gauge where this fan base is at because that loss in Super Bowl 57 was absolutely excruciating. And it's really hard to go back and even watch those highlights. But at the end of the day, 16-4 season combined in the regular season and in the playoffs, multiple All-Pros, and a Super Bowl berth to go along with an NFC Championship banner, which will be hung up at Lincoln Financial Field. So if you think the Eagles season was a success, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. If you don't think it was a success because the Eagles didn't win the Super Bowl and that is the ultimate goal, I want you to comment why. As always, we appreciate your feedback. As for what we're discussing on today's show, appreciate all of you for rocking and rolling with us. The Philadelphia Eagles signing 9 players to their roster who could really compete to make the 53 next summer in training camp. Philadelphia also interviewing an interesting defensive coordinator. We'll get into that. The Eagles' offensive coordinator search looks to be limited to one guy. Who is it? We'll tell you more. And Lane Johnson undergoing surgery. But we begin with the latest Eagles roster moves. The Birds signing 9 players to futures contracts per the NFL transaction report. As for who those players are, we're going to run through this list, but also give you some background on all 9 of these guys because no other YouTube channel is doing what we're doing right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. So those players being signed to those futures deals: wide receiver Devon Allen, wide receiver Tyrie Cleveland, offensive guard Sua Opeta, offensive tackle Fred Johnson, another offensive tackle in Roderick Johnson. Tarron Jackson, the defensive end, has also been signed to a deal. So too has Matt Leo at that same position. Former third-round pick Davion Taylor is being brought back to compete for a roster spot and at least be a training camp body. And Mario Goodrich, the defensive back, also being signed to a deal. As for some background on these players, we know Devon Allen pretty well. The Olympic speedster had that great touchdown catch in the NFL preseason in which he took the top off of the defense. I'd love to see his role maybe expand to special teams. That might give him an opportunity to crack that 53. Tyrie Cleveland had some really good size at that receiver spot, was a 7th-round pick by the Denver Broncos in 2020. For Sua Opeta, we've seen him play a lot for Philadelphia as compared to some of these other players. 25 games and 4 starts. Fred Johnson, good size at 6'7", 325 pounds, was a UDFA back in 2019. Roderick Johnson was drafted by the Browns in 2017 as a 5th-round pick, has really struggled to maintain a roster spot throughout his NFL career. Jackson, drafted by the Eagles in the 6th round in 2021. Matt Leo has been a long-term practice squad legend, but hasn't been able to crack consistent playing time or the 53. For Davion Taylor, really good athleticism, but his instincts are terrible. Prior to the preseason games, he was playing well in some of those practices, but when you lack instincts, that's of course a problem. And Mario Goodrich, very well known for putting in the Eagles locker room, a UDFA long-term practice squatter. As for the Eagles defensive coordinator search, Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman did address the media today at their post-season press conference, and Nick Sirianni said, what I love about being a coach is being able to elevate some of the assistant coaches because that's the point of building a coaching staff. But we will look externally for defensive coordinator. Didn't really talk about offensive coordinator in that way because if you read the tea leaves, it looks as though it's going to be Brian Johnson. But this here is pretty interesting. This guy to my right, Philadelphia interviewing Vance Joseph for that vacant spot that was left open because Jonathan Gannon went to Vance Joseph's former workplace in the Arizona Cardinals. Adam Schefter was on this, so too was Josina Anderson, longtime NFL insider, who said Vance Joseph not only has an interview request from the Broncos for a defensive coordinator, and the Broncos zeroing in on Rex Ryan, by the way. I'm told the Eagles have interest in speaking with Joseph as well and are expected to request an interview pending his meetings today, per source. And Joseph does have somewhat of a questionable track record when he's been a defensive coordinator in this league. And from 2017 to 2019, he was the head coach for the Denver Broncos. But when he was the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, 20th in DVOA, points per game allowed, tied for 24th, after getting fired by Denver in 2019. He then joined forces with the Arizona Cardinals that season, 20th in DVOA, points per game 28th. His best 2 seasons in 2020 and 2021, where the Cardinals were 10th in DVOA, 10th in points per game, and then the following season, 6th in DVOA, 10th in points per game, and then last year with Arizona under Cliff Kingsbury, 24th in DVOA, as that defense suffered a lot of injuries and dead last in points per game as the culture there in the desert. Awful for Arizona, and that's why they brought in Jonathan Gannon to try to right the ship. So we're going to get into a list of other defensive coordinator options for Philadelphia, but I do want to see who you want to be the Eagles defensive coordinator because the fans sometimes have a say in these matters. Let us know and share your thoughts down in the comment section. Other Eagles defensive coordinator candidates that I've seen announced and some names that are kind of picking up steam here. Denard Wilson, he's the current Eagles defensive backs coach and the pass game specialist. When I interviewed C.J. Gardner-Johnson last week at the Super Bowl, I asked him how he was able to make that transition so seamlessly from slot cornerback to safety. He pointed to his right, and he said Denard Wilson, he's that guy. And a lot of players on this Eagles defense really like him. Nick Sirianni's high on him. So as far as an internal hire goes, Denard Wilson is certainly a name to watch. So too is Nick Rallis, who's the Eagles linebackers coach. Sean Desai went to Temple University and coached there, Seahawks associate head coach. He's been rumored to maybe garner some interest from Philadelphia. Chris Richard was with the Seahawks during the Legion of Boom days. He just got let go by the New Orleans Saints. He was the former Saints co-defensive coordinator. And then Peter Hansen has come up under Vic Fangio. He was with the Broncos last year and then decided to go with Carolina to work under Frank Reich with Avero. He's the Panthers linebackers coach right now. That is a name who the Eagles are said to be high on. That report came from Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Now make sure you subscribe to the channel because when the Eagles make a roster move, when they hire a coach, we're going to talk about it here, and we have you covered every step of the way during this pivotal Eagles offseason that hopefully results in a Super Bowl 58 championship. We're less than 500 people away from 42,000 subscribers, so make sure you lock us in and subscribe today. From the defensive coordinator search to the offensive coordinator search, who will the Eagles hire after Shane Steichen took the Indianapolis Colts head coaching job? It looks as though there is one name to think about and one name only, and it's a guy who we've been talking about for a couple of months here. It's Brian Johnson, who currently holds the post of Eagles quarterbacks coach. Adam Schefter said this: the offensive coordinator is going to be Brian Johnson. That I don't think there's any question there. That you can take to the bank basically. For Adam Schefter to say that so definitively tells me that's going to be the move, and that's why I've been so confident in Nick Sirianni hiring him. And Sirianni did say today there are good options in-house for DC and OC. They will also look externally for what's best for this football team, but I think he was more so talking about defensive coordinator, not offensive coordinator. And we talked about this for months because it makes too much sense. Adam Schefter also said that Brian Johnson could have handpicked which team he could have gone to for offensive coordinator jobs if Shane Steichen were not to leave. And if the name sounds familiar and the face sounds familiar, Brian Johnson had a great career playing quarterback at Utah. He was actually the cover guy of NCAA Football 2010. I'm looking forward to that video game actually coming back to the forefront, but won a huge Sugar Bowl game with Utah back in the day, and that's actually where he got his coaching start after his professional career fizzled out to a certain degree. 2010 to 2013, he was a quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator for the Utes. Then he went to the SEC, Mississippi State to be specific, and he worked with Dak Prescott there as a quarterbacks coach with Mississippi State. He goes to Houston. He becomes the youngest offensive coordinator in college football in 2017, where he was also the quarterbacks coach. Went to Florida as the OC and quarterbacks coach, so the same job there that he had in Houston, and the last 2 seasons has been the quarterbacks coach for Philadelphia. And another reason why I think this makes a lot of sense is because Jalen Hurts seemingly wants it to happen. And if you're going to lock up Jalen Hurts to a long-term contract extension, you want to gauge who he wants to work with and who's in his ear as the Philadelphia Eagles play caller. And for Brian Johnson, he's very familiar with this offense and how it works and the intricacies of it. Here's what Hurts had to say last week in Arizona about Brian Johnson. It's a very special relationship that I have with him that dates back to my younger days, being a 5-year-old kid, a 4-year-old kid running around at Robert E. Lee High School, where my dad used to coach Brian Johnson, and my dad was the mentor for Brian Johnson. I've always wanted to play for him, always wanted to be coached by him, and kind of was delayed not going to Mississippi State, for me not going to Florida, but everything worked itself out. Definitely looking forward to what the future holds. So is Jalen Hurts basically saying in the lead up to the Super Bowl that the future could be Brian Johnson as the next head coach because he knew that Shane Steichen was going to go to Indy? Maybe. So Jalen Hurts in 2023 with a new offensive coordinator. In 2022, runner-up to Patrick Mahomes for the league's MVP. Will he be better with some offseason change? Will he be worse? Will he be the same? BWS. Let us know down below in the comments section. We appreciate your comments. Let's round out with this. Lane Johnson undergoing surgery. He posted this on social media, a picture of him on a hospital bed on Thursday. Expected to be a 10 to 12-week recovery. As for his future, he's really tight with Jay Glazer. And I caught up with Jay Glazer. I asked him, is Lane Johnson going to retire this year or in the future? And Jay Glazer said, I don't see Lane retiring, man. Lane is now being regarded as the best tackle in the league, and I think he's going to thrive there for a while. That's a direct quote from Jay Glazer, who does some martial arts training with Lane Johnson throughout the offseason, and they're really good buddies. Now, that's interesting for a couple of reasons, because Lane did say prior to the year and during the season, he could see himself playing for 2, maybe 3 more years, but has that tune kind of shifted a little bit because he's been so dominant? Of course, for Lane, he's dealt with some injuries throughout his career, so hopefully he's able to avoid the injury bug and continue to hold it down as the anchor on that right side of the line of scrimmage.